Okay, so in this video, we're going to put together a tag editor. Now, a tag editor will allow us to insert new tags that may not actually be in the database on the post creation and the post update form. So we're going to go ahead and start off with our view model. Now, in our view model, I want to create a representation of a tag that's appropriate for our particular use case. Which is to say, we need to create a tag checkbox which contains a public int nullable ID, a public string name, and a public bool is checked. Now, the reason we need a nullable ID is that this handles situations where the tag has been created or maybe the tag has not been created yet. Next up, on our posts form, I'm going to create a public ilist of tag checkbox called tags. And this is going to represent the tags that will be available for use on our form. Sound good?
Yeah, I'm liking this so far.
Okay, I'm going to go into the controller and I'm going to do something a little fun. Now, you'll see that there are two actions that use the same view, our new and our edit. I want to add in code that will add in our tags on both of these actions into our view model. Now, in the case of new, that's going to be really easy. I just need to map from the database to our tag checkbox type. With edit, I need to do the same thing, but I also need to make sure that I set the isChecked to true for tags that already exist. Make sense?
Yep, that's making sense.
So we're going to say tags equals database session tags, tag dot select, tag goes into new tag checkbox, open up our object initialization, set ID to tag ID, name to tag name, is checked to false, because we want to default all our tags to false. Finally, we need to convert this into a list, so we use the .toList extension method.
All right, nice.
So that's for our new form. For our edit form, however, we need to say tags equals database session. It's basically the same thing, but with one exception. So let's do tag select, tag goes into new tag checkbox, and then what we're doing is we're going to say ID equals tag ID, name equals tag name, and is checked equals post tags contains tag with the .toList. Looking good?
Alrighty, yeah, that looks good.
Okay, so now what we have to do is we have to go back to our editor and put together our view for our tags. We do that by jumping into our form.cshtml, and like I said before, we are going to add the tag editor to the second column. It's actually just going to be a panel, just like our form actions. So our editor is going to look like this. We're going to have a div class panel of type panel info. So that'll give it a kind of a pleasant little visual style to it. Then we're going to say div class panel heading of tags. Then we're going to say div class panel body. And we're going to mark this up with something interesting. I'm actually going to preemptively put in some classes that are going to be used in JavaScript to give our tag editor some more functionality. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to create this tag or this class on this element as post tag editor. That sounds like a good name, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so we have two components to our tag editor. The first one is going to be the bit that allows us to enter in a new tag name. So we're going to start off with the label, and it's going to be for new tag name, and it's going to be called new tag : for the label. Immediately after that, however, I need an input group. The way I'm doing this is I'm actually going to use Bootstrap's capability to add a button next to a text box, and we're going to see how that looks in a moment. It looks actually really good, so I'm going to go with that style. Again, you can find more about this on the Bootstrap documentation page. So I'm going to say input with the ID of new tag name. Now this is going to be the text box, so it has a type of text, and it's going to have a class of new tag name and form control. Finally, I'm going to add a span. And the span is going to have a class of input group button. Inside of the span, not surprisingly, is going to be a button. Now the button is going to default to be disabled. We'll see why in a moment. And it's going to have a class of button, button primary, add tag button, and it's going to have the text of add.
Perfect.
Now that was a lot of HTML. Let's just see how it looks so far. If I come over here and refresh, this is what we get.
Well, that looks pretty.
Yep. And it also has our new tag text box, and look at the add button.
All right, awesome.
It's like it's combined into the
field. Yeah,
Yep.
I like that.
So that is our form. It doesn't do anything yet. It won't do anything yet until we add the JavaScript, but I just wanted to get the form out of the way for that. Next up, I'm going to go ahead and add in the tag checkboxes, which are going to be implemented in a really nice little way. We are going to create a UL with the class of Tag Select. Inside the UL, we're going to go ahead and say for var I equals 0, I smaller than model.tags, I++. When I said I is smaller than model.tags, I meant model tags length. And I meant .count. Just ignore me. Stuff. Words. Let's type code.
Happy words.
Yes. Code. Let's type code. More code. Let's say tag. And let's say tag equals model.tags.i. Because we're in a for loop. And that's what for loops do. Next up, I'm going to create an li. Obviously, I'm going to create an li because we're in a ul. And inside of the li, I'm going to go ahead and give it a couple of attributes. The first attribute is going to be data-tag-id equals tag.id. Just using the HTML5 data API to allow us to attach some additional data to our element. Next up, I'm going to say its class. The class of this is going to be tag.isChecked selected, otherwise empty. So
Alrighty.
That way, if the tag is checked, this li will have a class of selected. Otherwise, it'll have a class of blank. Next up, I'm going to create an ahref tag.name link. I'm not going to do anything special to the link, and I will leave the href being blank because it's going to be JavaScript that hooks into this. Finally, I have to create the form fields that will represent this tag or the collection of tags for our data binder. To do that, I need 3 hidden inputs. So we'll have hidden with the name of, we're going to call it tags at I.id with the value of tag.id. Next up, we'll have a type of hidden with the name of tags at I.name with the value of tag.name. I bet you didn't see that coming.
I didn't, but you know me.
Next up, we're going to have an input type hidden with tags at I.isChecked. Value is obviously going to be something you may not have expected. Here's why. I'm saying value equals tag.isChecked. This is actually a slight problem for Razer. When Razer encounters a Boolean value being set to an attribute, what it'll do is it'll treat it as if it is an XHTML Boolean value. If you guys recall in XHTML, you always had to set an attribute to a value in quotes. So if you wanted to say something was disabled, for example, you couldn't just do this. You would have to say disabled equals disabled. That's the valid way to do it in XHTML, but isn't the case in HTML5.
Okay.
Because of this behavior, Razer assumes that if you have a Boolean set to an attribute and it's a type Boolean, it'll treat it as if it's an HTML Boolean. Meaning, if tag is not checked, it will not print this attribute. If tag is checked, it's not going to say true, it's going to say value equals value. Which is obviously not what I want.
No.
To fix this behavior, we can simply say tag.isChecked.toString. I'm also going to mark this up with with a class. It's going to be called selected input. The reason I'm marking this up with a class isn't so I can style it. Obviously, I'm not going to be styling because it's a hidden input. The reason I'm marking it up with a class is so I can yank it out with JavaScript.
That's nifty.
Yep. Okay, there's one more thing we need to do with our tag select, and that has to do with the pattern we're going to be using to generate HTML. I'm going to create a template item. The template item is an li with the class of template, and what it's going to be is it's going to be an HTML element that is cloned when we create a new tag.
Okay.
So it's going to contain a skeleton of all the markup we need with elements that have their names marked up with classes. So we're going to say input type equals hidden. We're going to call this one class name input. And we're going to do another one. Input type equals hidden class. And then this one is going to be called the selected input. Again, we're doing this because we're creating a template. We're creating an HTML element that will be cloned. We're going to use CSS to hide this element so it's not rendered, but we'll use it in JavaScript to pretty much make cloning or adding additional items to this list on the client side a whole lot easier.
That seems very cool.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what I want to do now is I want to build the CSS. I could go ahead and build the JavaScript right now and the C#, but I want to do the CSS first so that we can at least differentiate between tags that are selected and tags that aren't selected. Unfortunately, the catch-22 is that I don't have any way to, well, select a tag yet, because that's what I'm building. So what do we have to do, Steve?
Yeah. You know I don't know.
Well, we have to jump into the database and do this manually.
Oh, okay.
Because we don't have the editor yet. But I want to see an example of some tags being presented. So I'm going to go into tags, and I'm going to let's create a programming tag. Sound good?
That sounds good.
And let's create a design tag. And let's create an awesome tag.
That's the best one.
Yep. So I'm going to hit apply. And now for my post, let's go ahead and work on post 19. So I'm going to go ahead and add design to post 19. And I do that by basically saying insert into post tags, tag ID, post ID, values, to, what was it, 19. So now I've just related post 19 to tag 2.
Alrighty.
So in this way, I can now finish up the CSS for my page before it's actually functional, which I want to do because CSS is fun, it'll make it look nicer, and it'll make it more obvious what's going on.
I like more obvious.
Alrighty, I'm going to hit F6 to build, and I'm going to go into this guy, wait for my server to restart, and here's what we get. Now obviously the CSS to this isn't, well, in existence.
Okay.
If it was in existence, then this would not look like a normal list, and the template item right here, the first item in the list, wouldn't be displaying. So let's go ahead and jump into our admin.css file and fix that. So we're wanting to scope all of the rules we're about to make to our post tag editor so that we don't accidentally style something that we're not intending to. So I'm going to go ahead and say post tag editor, post tag editor dot tag select is going to have a list style. No, come on. There you go. Of none. It's going to have a padding of 0. I don't know why I have the habit of doing that. And it has the margin of 10 px up and down, 0 left and right.
Okay.
Next up, I'm going to do tag select li. So a list item. A list item will have a margin of 0, a padding of 0, and let's give it a border bottom of 1 pixel dashed light gray. So if you want to see what that looks like so far, I can come over here and hit refresh and we get this.
All right.
But we're not done yet. We have to go ahead and hide our template. So I'm going to copy this rules selector and say li.template. I'm going to say display none. That'll hide our template. Next up, we have to style our A tag. So post tag editor, tag select li A. This will style our A tags inside of our tag select list. Our A tags are going to have a display of block. They're going to have a padding of 2 pixels up and down and 5 pixels left and right. And they're going to have a border left of 20 pixels, solid, slightly darker gray. Sound good?
Okay. Yep. Sounds good.
Next up, I want to style the tag select lia when they're hovered over. What do I want to do? Let's remove their text decoration and give the background to be a light gray.
All right.
There is one more thing we need to style, and that is a selected tag, which is going to be li.selectedA. We're not actually styling the li that's selected, but we're styling the a tag that appears underneath an li if it has a selected class. If none of this makes sense, you should definitely check out that CSS class that I did a couple months ago. In this particular case, I'm going to cheat and read off some numbers, specifically the some hex values for some colors that I chose and decided looked nice. So when a tag is selected, we want to give it a particular background, and we also want to give it a border left color of 3A87AD. So what do you think?
Those are very nice. Those are very nice colors.
Awesome. So now I'm going to hit refresh, and look what we get.
That is very pretty. I like it.
Mm-hmm. So now that we have that done, let's go ahead and write the JavaScript that is going to be responsible for selecting one of these items or deselecting one of these items. Effectively, all we have to do when we click on one of these A tags is we have to toggle its selected class, and we have to change the isChecked value of its hidden input to true. Sound good?
That makes perfect sense.
Awesome. So let's open up a new JavaScript file. Because this JavaScript is going to be just slightly long-winded, I want to go ahead and create a new one so we can have some better organization. I'm going to open up the Areas Admin Scripts folder, and inside that I'm going to add a new code file. The code file is going to be called Post Editor. Now, like always, I'm going to say document.ready function. And I created a posteditor.cs, not a posteditor.js. Whoops. Just rename that to JS, and now we're golden. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to grab the tag editor out of the document and store it in a reference. So I'm going to say var tag editor equals dot post tag editor. The next thing I want to do is I want to implement the click logic. Now, the click logic is going to be implemented as a live event. What do I mean by that? Well, I don't want to attach an event handler to all these existing tags, because if I added a new tag, the event handler wouldn't be added to it. So I want to write some code that will always handle a click event of an A tag that appears in this list, whether it's been added after the page has been loaded or not.
Okie dokie.
To do that, we use a special jQuery capability that used to be called live events. Now it's a fairly core capability of using the on method. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say tag editor dot find. So I'm finding an element. Tag select. Then I'm going to say on click for this selector do this thing. So what does all this code mean? Well, we're first grabbing that UL. Remember, the UL that has all of our tags has the class of tag select. Then we're attaching a click handler onto it, but this click handler will only fire if the click event originated from an A tag that is a direct descendant of an LI tag that is a direct descendant of the UL. So effectively, this will attach a click event handler onto every list item in this tag select list, past, present, or future.
Okie dokie.
The first thing I want to do is I want to do e.preventDefault, obviously, because we're handling a click event on a link. We want to make sure that the browser doesn't try to navigate to the URL part that I put into the URL fragment that I put into the href.
Okay.
Then we're going to go ahead and alias out a reference to this as a jQuery object. Then we're going to get the tag parent object, which is simply invoking this closest, and the closest is going to be li. So the closest li to this element we want selected. Then we want to determine if it's been selected, or rather what we want to do is we want to toggle the selected class on the li. So we say tag parent toggle class selected. After that, we want to determine if it is selected. So I'll say var selected equals target parent, or tag parent, dot has class selected. Then I'm going to say tag parent dot find selected input dot val selected. All this does is does the two steps that I outlined earlier. First of all, it toggles the selected class on the parent li, and then it updates the hidden form field that determines to the server whether or not the particular tag is selected.
Alrighty.
Meaning if I come back here and hit refresh, nothing will happen because I actually don't have this post editor imported into my bundle yet. I'm going to go back into app start, into bundle config, and I'm going to create a new JavaScript bundle by copying and pasting admin scripts. I'm also going to create admin post scripts, which is going to be the exact same in every way, except for I'm going to include areas admin scripts post editor.js.
All right. So we've got that implemented then.
Right.
Well, once we did F6.
Actually, a better way to do this would be to remove everything and add in both of them at the same time. That would actually be a better implementation. Because then all these scripts will be cached under one level in your browser, and these will only be cached in another level. So it's probably better to do that. So I'm going to jump back into form, and I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I'm going to add the section scripts to it. Remember that?
Yep.
And then I'm going to say scripts.render, and the path I chose was admin post scripts. All right, so how do you feel about all that?
Broken.
I'm sorry.
I think this looks awesome, but I feel broken.
Okay, well, let's go ahead. This is going to be one of the most difficult things in our lessons, because this is really combining every single thing that we've learned so far. So don't be discouraged if it might take a couple watches of the video to follow along. Okay, so now I can click on the tags.
That's very nice.
In addition, watch what happens when I click on them. Watch what happens to the isChecked value. It switches between true and false.
That is awesome. We want that to happen.
Yep. Which means when I post to the server, it will be made aware which tags I selected.
Excellent.
Okay, let's go ahead and add in the capability of creating new tags, because that's where things get fairly, or at least more complicated than they are. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and alias out a couple more variables. So I want an add tag button. That's going to be tag editor.find.add tag button. Then I want the new tag name editor, which is going to be tag editor.find. Guess what? New tag name. Now that I have both of those, I want to go ahead and I'm going to stub out an add tag function, because it's going to be called twice, or not called twice, but called from two different places. Basically, the tag select will allow you to hit the enter key on your keyboard and it'll add a tag, or you can click on the button. So because we're going to have that behavior come out of two distinct locations or event handlers. I'm going to have that functionality exist in a single function.
Nice.
Okay, so now let's go ahead and create the handler for our add tag button. Add tag button dot click will simply, if I can type, will simply e.prevent default and then add tag new tag name dot val, and that's it. So when we click on the add tag button, we just invoke the add tag function. Now we have to implement the new tag name key up handler. So new tag name, if you recall, is the input for typing in a new tag name. So I'm going to say new tag name dot key up function, and I'm also going to add a handler for key down function. The reason I need both, and let's go ahead and implement the key down first because it's going to be easier, is the key down is going to be used to determine if the user hit the enter key. I can simply do e.which. If e.which does not equal 13, return. Otherwise, e.prevent default add tag new tag name.val. Sound good so far?
Okie dokie. Yeah, sounds good so far.
Okay, what's the key up going to be used for? Well, the key up is going to be used to determine if the add tag button needs to be enabled or disabled. Remember how it starts off disabled because the value is blank?
Yep.
What we're going to do is we're going to say if new tag name.val.trim.length is greater than 0, then add tag button.prop disabled is false. Otherwise, add tag button prop disabled true. Looking good?
Looking good.
So now we can come here and refresh and watch what happens when I start typing. The add button appears, or it becomes undisabled. And then watch what happens when I remove everything. It becomes disabled again.
Excellent.
So that's exactly what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. The final bit of the JavaScript we have to write is the add tag function. Now, if you recall, the add tag function is going to basically load up that template that we have right here, this template li. It's going to clone it, and then it's going to fill in the name input, and the selected input. Sound good?
Makes perfect sense to me.
Alrighty, so if we go back to the post editor, the first thing we have to determine is the index. See, if you recall, the way that ASP.NET MVC binds to collections, it requires us to use this array-looking syntax, which means if we want to add a new tag, we have to actually go ahead and increment this index1 when we add it for our names of our inputs.
Okay.
So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and say var new index equals tag editor dot find dot tag dash select direct descendant li dot size -1. That's basically saying get me how many li's are underneath tag select and then subtract 1, and that's our new index.
Okie dokie.
Okay, the next thing is going to be a little fun. I'm going to do it in effectively one line of code, but I'm going to spread it out over quite a few lines of code. Please don't hate me.
I'm just impressed you're going to do it in effectively one line of code.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm going to split it up, but it could be on one line if it needed to be. Okay, watch this. This is some jQuery magic about to happen. First of all, tag editor.find tag select li.template, right? We want to find the template. What do we want to do with the template? We want to clone the template. We have now cloned the template. Now what do we want to do with the template? We want to remove the template class from the template because the clone template is no longer a template, right?
Sure.
Next, let's go ahead and add class selected. So we add class selected, we'll assume that if a person types in a tag and hits enter, they want the post that they are on editing right now to be considered to be added to that tag.
That makes sense.
Next up, we have to update all of these things. We have to update the name input, and the selected input. So we're going to do find name, text, name, end. Find name input, val name, adder name, tags, square bracket, new index, unsquare bracket, dot name, dot end. Find selected input, dot adder name, tags, open bracket, new index, close bracket, dot is checked, val true, end. And then finally, append to tag editor find dot tag select. Then new tag name val empty, add tag button prop disabled true.
That looks magical.
It is. Kind of. It's just jQuery. So this is basically one line of code. It's just a massive jQuery chain. I could have made this actually a little bit easier to read, but I sometimes like having fun with these massive chains. See, what you can do is you can say .find, and then you can find an element, set properties on that element, and then do .end, and it'll pop back to what we were looking at before the find. So that way you can chain everything up into a single huge method invocation.
Okie dokie.
Anyway,
that one's a little beyond me, but moving on.
well, yeah. Hopefully everyone though takes a look at this stuff, and at least even if you haven't played too much with jQuery before, I highly recommend to look into it. And at least you can take a look at the stuff maybe you don't understand, and take a look at the documentation on jQuery.org, because it is pretty good.
All right.
So I'm going to refresh, and let's see if we can add a tag. Check that out.
Look at all those tags. That's awesome.
Now, if we look at their hidden inputs, we see that they are properly set up.
Very nice.
Okay, so now we've done the client side of our tag editor, but we actually have not done the server side yet. So in order to do that, we need to write some code inside of our action. So all the client side's done, so we can go ahead and just jump out of that for now. And we can open back up posts controller, and we have to go into edit, and we have to figure out how we're going to reconcile the tags that have been selected in the tag checkbox. We have to figure out how we can determine which tags we need to add, which tags we need to remove, and so on and so on. So what I'm going to do is, after the validation, I'm actually right here. I'm actually going to make a method. So I'm going to say var selected tags equals reconcile tags form dot tags. So I literally am going to make a method called reconcile tags. What's reconcile tags going to do? Well, it's going to loop through all the tags that are selected. For the tags that have IDs, it's going to return the tag from the database. For tags that don't have IDs, it's going to check to see if the name of that tag already exists, in which case it'll return a tag from the database. If the tag does not have an ID, and it doesn't already exist, it'll be created and added to the database and then returned.
That sounds really smooth.
Yep. So that's why we're breaking it up into another method, so we don't have to make this method much larger than it already is. So let's go ahead and write this method. It'll be fairly straightforward. We're going to implement it as an iterator block. So I'm going to say private IEnumerable. This will bring in system collections generic. Tag, reconcile tags, IEnumerable of tag checkbox tags. Then we're going to say for each var tag in tags dot select, or sorry, dot where T goes into is checked. So we're only looping through the tags that were checked. Now we're going to say if tag ID does not equal null, yield return database session load tag.id. That means that the user selected a tag that already existed in the database. Then we'll say var existing tag equals database session query tag first or default T goes into T name equals tag name. If existing tag does not equal null, that means that a tag with the same name as the tag that the user is trying to add already exists in the database, and we want to use that one instead. So I'll say yield return existing tag, continue. Finally, if we get this far, we need to create a new tag. So I'm going to say var new tag equals new tag, and I'm going to give it some things. I'm going to say name equals tag.name, and slug equals something. Talk about that in a second.
I like that.
Finally, we'll do database session save new tag, and then yield return new tag. Okay, so what goes in here? Well, we're not actually generating the slug on the client side like we are with the users, or with the posts, sorry. Instead, what we're doing is we're allowing the data or the server, the web server, to create the tags for us, which means we need a slugify method in C#. We need a way to generate a slug from a name inside of C# that isn't JavaScript, obviously, because we're out of JavaScript. We're on the server side.
Okie dokie. How are we going to do that?
With magic and friendship.
I love it.
Okay, I'm going to go in infrastructure, and I'm going to add a new namespace called extensions. Inside of extensions, I'm going to create string extensions. String extensions will be an extension method class, so it has to be static. And then it's going to have a public static string slugify. That is an extension method on strings. So to make it an extension method on strings, we write this string that. Then I'm going to say that equals regex. Regex will import system text regular expressions. Dot replace that with, guess what we're going to put here?
I don't know.
That terrifying regex from our client-side slugifier.
Oh, that thing with the 0 to 9, the count, yeah, and none of the stuff, and
Yeah.
and things.
And things.
Monkeys have hair, potatoes taste good. I can't think anymore.
Okay, so then we're going to say that dot to lower. You'll notice that we're basically doing the exact same thing that the JavaScript side did. And then we're going to say regex replace that with, of course, any one space or more with dashes. And then we'll return that. So that's our slugify extension. So how do we use it? Well, we go back into posts, and instead of the question marks, we do tag.name.slugify. Now, of course, that's going to require that we import the simple blog infrastructure extensions namespace, which we can do by just clicking on that.
That was beautiful.
Yep. Our tags are now reconciled.
That is excellent.
We have one more step.
And that is?
We have our tags now, but we haven't actually added them to our posts.
We are going to need to do that.
We are going to need to do that. One of two things is going to happen. Either the post is new or the post already exists. If the post is new, this is really, really easy. For each, var tag in selected tags, post tags add tag. Boom.
That was really easy.
Now, it's going to be a little bit more complex, but still fairly trivial to do it for editing. Because for editing, we also have to account for the fact that the user may have unselected a tag. So we'll do the same thing we did with users and roles. I'll say for each var to add in new tags, or sorry, not new tags, but selected tags, dot where t goes into not post tag contains t. Then I'll say post tags add to add. Whoops, that was not what I wanted. There we go. Then I'm going to do the to remove. To remove is going to be the opposite of the previous loop, where we'll loop over the existing tags and only remove them if they don't exist in the new tags. So I'm going to say if in post tags where t goes into not selected tags contains t to list. Remember, I have to copy it into a new list because I'm actually going to be editing the collection that this query is based off of. So I have to copy it into a temporary location. Then I'm going to say post tags remove to remove.
I like it.
The final thing I'm going to do is I will do reconcile tags. I'll do .toList at the end of it just to copy it into a list so that we don't have to perform those operations multiple times with our reconciliation. But that's just due to the nature of an iterator block.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
Where do we go from here?
Well, I hit Control or F6 and I see if it works.
Excellent.
So let's start off simple. Let's try to create a post with an existing tag, like programming. Now we get an error. We get object reference not set to an instance of an object. Do you know what's awesome about this?
What is awesome about this?
Remember a long time ago when I was talking about my user and I said I always like instantiating the collections in the constructor because when you don't do that, you have to remember to instantiate it when you're actually trying to create an entity?
Yes.
Well, we're running into a situation where our posts, when we add the tags to it, its tags is set to null. To make it so we don't have to worry about whether or not our post has been created or not, I'm going to add a constructor to post that sets tags to new list of tags. And I'm also going to go into tags and do the same thing for posts. So in posts, I just create a constructor that instantiates my tags collection to an empty list. And then I'll do the same, but opposite thing here.
All right.
Now that I've done that, I'll hit Control F6. I'll come back here. I'll reload up this form in a year. Type in a title, try to add the programming tag, and check that out.
That's awesome.
Now let's create a post with a tag that doesn't exist yet and a tag that does exist yet. See that?
That is really cool.
Now let's remove doesn't exist and add awesome.
You were right. It is friendship and magic.
Indeed. Oh, I actually need to type content on that. There we go. Okay. That is our tag editor.
That was amazing, and you managed to make it less painful than I thought it was going to be.
Well, I guess that's a good thing.
Indeed.
Okay, so I think this wraps up this video. Of course, what we always have to do is go ahead and commit our changes. Go ahead and stage those, commit. Now, what we did in this video is we added our tag editor on our post edit form. Or how about let's just call it post form. There we go.
Perfect.
And we're committed. So I guess we will see you guys in the next video.
Woohoo!